Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Basics podcast where we are taking a deep dive into Basics 101 of plant based nutrition. So, I'm Emily. I am the founder and owner of Meatless Meals LLC, focusing on plant based nutrition, coaching, and fitness coaching. Not really doing it as much anymore, kind of taking a step back to work on other projects. But Dawn and I have come together to put together this podcast. So, Dawn, do you want to do a little quick intro about you before we dive into today's topic?
Sure. My name's Dawn Hutchins. I have a background in plant-based nutrition and I'm a plant-based chef. I founded a company called Veggie Cooking where we teach cooking classes for weight loss, vitality, and long-term health, focus on plant-based, of course. And I'm the director of plant-based nutrition for a large company in California where I run a corporate wellness program in collaboration with the Plant Strong by Metabite team. So a very varied background in plant-based eating and cooking.
Beautiful. Love it. I have my special guest in here, Bruno, who was just whining. So hopefully he can stay in here while we do this. But so today, episode 4. Last month we talked about the plate method, how to build a healthy plant-based plate. Today we're talking about reading food labels, what to look for and what to avoid. So I feel like this is just, again, such a great elementary, step to learn when you're talking about nutrition. So we're going to take a brief deep dive into nutrition labels. Let's first start by talking about like big picture label reading. So what are some of the things to look for and avoid, Dawn?
Mm-hmm. One of the first things I tell everybody is don't believe anything on the front of the package. Just don't believe it because it's marketing to you.
Yeah.
You're always going to want to turn it over and look at the label and the ingredients. So the first thing you're going to want to notice on the label is the number of servings. So you might have a package that is a king size M&Ms or something, and you're thinking this is one serving. Well, it could be 3 servings. So the first thing you always want to look at is the number of servings. And sometimes in order to keep the calories low that they're putting on the front of the package, it's because the servings are weird. And sometimes it might be 1.6 servings. So just something to look at, because then the next thing you're going to look at is the serving size. So if you are looking at a soup container and it says there are 2 servings in this can and each serving is 3/4 of a cup, are you going to be full on 3/4 of a cup? Probably not. You're going to eat the 2 servings that are in the can.
Yeah.
So that means you have to multiply the calories and all the other things beneath it. So those are really the first few things that we're going to look at on the label.
Yep, definitely. I was going to say, I feel like it can definitely get tricky. And kind of going back to your whole, the front of the package, don't believe what you see. Even the colors. Like, I come from the background of marketing as well as, Meatless Meals. And it's like colors they use, the words they use, the just there's so much that goes into marketing and making things look good, feel tasty or feel healthy, whatever it might be, in order to sell. I mean, a lot of it does come down to profit. So I think those are definitely important, and just being aware of how many servings you're having, because that can add up quickly if you're thinking, oh, 150 calories, cool, and then it's actually 3 servings and it's
Right.
450.
Yeah.
I think I did that math right. So yes, that's a good point. What about like the macronutrient breakdowns, fat, carbohydrates, and protein, as far as label reading?
Okay, so and I've got a label off the screen here that I'm looking at as I'm talking about it. So when you're looking at the fat, we want to keep fat lower. There are 9 calories per gram of fat, and there are 4 in the same amount of carbohydrates and protein. So when you're eating fat, that's why it's more calorie dense, because it has more than twice the amount of calories of any carbohydrate or protein. So when you're looking at the percentages on the label, you want it to be closer to 5% is lower and 10% is higher. So just when you're reading the label and you're looking at the fat,
Mm-hmm.
you really want to keep the saturated fat as low as possible. Zero is great, but you want to make sure you're keeping that below the 5% and the total fat as well. Hopefully we don't have any products with trans fat anymore, because that is really bad. I would completely avoid trans fat.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Okay.
Um, yeah, should I move to so carbohydrates? I personally don't worry about my
Same,
carbohydrates.
same.
I eat an ungodly amount of carbohydrates. What I do pay attention to is the dietary fiber and the added sugars. So I want to keep my added sugars low, because I'm really wanting to not eat, I want to eat natural sugars instead
Yeah,
of added sugars.
yeah.
But the fiber, I really want to pay attention to because I'm looking at this red lentil pasta that I talked about in the last episode. This has 6 grams of fiber, and Americans are very deficient in fiber.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited that this has 6 grams. And then, of course, I like to look at the protein just out of curiosity. This lentil pasta has 15 grams of protein in just 3/4 of a cup. But that in our corporate wellness program where we're teaching plant-based nutrition, the protein, if you're eating a balanced, like we talked about the healthy plate, that's just going to come because your quarter of your plate is in the protein category of a legume, your tofu, your sources of plant-based protein. So we don't really worry about that too much.
Yeah, yeah. And on the contrary, I have a not so healthy. I don't know how these ended up in my freezer half empty. I eat junk sometimes, but just
Yeah.
thinking of what you're saying, this has 7 grams of fat, 150 calories, so way higher in the fat category here. Uh, Fiber 2 grams. So reading the ingredients, that's my mind mostly goes or first goes to the ingredient list. So potatoes is the first ingredient, that's great, but then we have canola oil, salt, corn flour, dehydrated potato, citric acid, dextrose. I mean, the more of these weird, like if you can't pronounce it for the most part, that's probably a red flag. But looking for those whole ingredients. So for instance, contrary, your lentil
Yeah.
pasta, what's in the ingredients there?
Okay, let's see what's in this. So in this is organic red lentil flour.
Beautiful.
That's it.
Yep.
One ingredient.
Yep.
And I also another thing that I wanted to talk about really quickly is the sodium. So what I try to do is keep the milligrams of sodium less than the amount of the calories. So this has 210 calories per serving, but it has 0 milligrams of sodium. So
Yeah.
that is a great option. In most of your packaged foods, you're going to find the sodium to be extremely high.
Yep. I was gonna say that's 330 milligrams sodium, 150 calories. So a good example of that's a lot of sodium given the calories. So
And so that's a little trick. And the other thing that you may want to look at is cholesterol, because that is going to tell you whether there's an animal food in your product. So the only foods that have cholesterol are animal foods.
yep.
So plant foods have no cholesterol. And so that's kind of a way for you to tell really quickly, does this maybe have milk in it? Does maybe this have eggs in it? And then of course, then you're going to go to the ingredients that we can talk more about.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a good connection there, just at a quick glance. And I guess I just want to add a side note here because we came from last episode talking about the plate method, and that you don't have to really measure or weigh, and it's just an estimate. I don't want anyone to feel intimidated or like about reading food labels. I think the general idea is to gain awareness. And so you can just glance at labels and have a better awareness. If you're eating primarily fruits, vegetables, whole grains, those whole foods, there aren't even ingredient labels on most of those anyway.
Right.
Or like yours, that's one ingredient, brown rice, one ingredient. So there's really nothing to worry about there. I know, like I just said, sometimes I'll have junk food, and sometimes it's like, I'm going to have some vegan nuggets. Are those healthy? Not at all. But it's like I have the awareness of, oh wow, those are really not healthy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have just one serving this time or whatever. Just gaining that awareness. I think that's the main idea, not to feel like you have to go, psycho with the label and
Right.
keep it military discipline wise, but just gaining that awareness.
That is such a good point. And what we have found is that in our program, we've had hundreds of people come through. And as we do the label reading, the number of times I've heard people say, I never really even turned it over and looked at it. I
Yeah.
just looked at what it said on the front of the package
Yeah.
and it looked like it was healthy. I mean, I can't believe once I turned it over, how many servings are in it or what the serving size is. I mean, they're like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just can't believe it. So that is when even just looking at the label is going to change your behavior.
Yeah, definitely. And that goes to the whole like knowledge is power,
Mhm.
rather than just taking the face value front label and like you're saying that. I mean, it's marketing, so it's not
Yeah.
going to be accurate. The healthy like yours is healthy, and there's the label. It's like, but how are we going to differentiate just reading the front and the colors and the fonts and everything? Unhealthy from healthy, it gets very
Right.
misleading. So.
Yeah.
I know we kind of touched on this next segment I have here, but cholesterol. Do you have anything else to add to cholesterol, or did we cover it as far as if you see cholesterol, there's some kind of animal product in it?
Yeah, that's usually our flag for if there is some kind of animal food in there.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the plant-based processed like frozen things are they're now adding it might look on the front of the package like it's a vegan product or plant-based,
Yeah, yeah,
and then when you turn it over they've now started adding eggs or milk, so people that were really trying to follow a plant-based diet and eliminate animal foods are like, oh my gosh, there's now cholesterol in this. And then
yeah,
it's a flag for they've started adding dairy or eggs.
yeah,
So that's just something to keep in mind with the cholesterol, and that remembering that companies will change their formulas of how they're making things. So just something to be
yeah.
aware of, to check your labels, even if it's a product that you've been eating for a while, and see if anything's changed, because that does happen a lot.
That's a good recommendation. That's happened to me before, and you'd think I would be a master at label reading by now, but there's been a few times where I'll have something and then I'm like, oh my
Oh,
gosh, there
totally.
was dairy in it. It's like
Yeah.
it things
And
get
that's
sneaky.
okay. You're
Yeah,
just doing that's something that I think is really important to understand. You're not going to get voted off the island if you, accidentally realize you ate something that had egg or dairy in it. If your goal is to be completely whole food plant-based and or vegan, it, we've got to stop that whole idea of perfection.
yeah, yeah.
Like we're doing the best we can. And especially if there was something that was not intended, that we can't beat ourselves up for it.
Good note. Good note to remember. One more thing about cholesterol before we move on is that our bodies make all the cholesterol we need, so we don't need to get it from food. So
That's
just
very
as
true.
yeah, I
That's a
was
great.
gonna say, so it's not like some of these other nutrients. It's like we need to get them. We don't need to get cholesterol. So
Mhm.
moving on to sodium. Again, I know you touched on this as far as it should be lower than the calorie count. Do you have anything else as far as like what foods typically have more salt in them, or any other tips, tricks, knowledge about the sodium component of a label?
So one of the things that would be excluded from that rule is condiments. And you might see my dog's walking around here too. So we both got our dogs here with us helping out.
I know if you see my
Um,
arm moving subtly, it's
yeah,
just because I'm petting him.
yes. Um, so with the sodium, we were talking about earlier, soy sauce. Soy sauce, of course, is going to have more sodium than the calories because it's a condiment and you're using it like salt. So you're using these condiments so sparingly that you wouldn't really necessarily read it the same way. You're really looking for your main foods that soups are notoriously high in
Yeah,
sodium.
good call. Yeah.
Salad dressings can be high. breads can be high. I mean, there's all these weird hidden ketchup, and ketchup has all kinds of hidden added sugar in it. So, I think just you're going to be really shocked when you're looking at any kind of soup or, some of these just highly processed foods, the amount of sodium is off the charts. We, in our coaching program, where we work with the Plant Strong by Metabite team, for participation rewards, they are shipped Plant Strong products. Well, the Plant Strong products are made so that they're low in sodium, so that people with high blood pressure and things can eat these foods. So they're kind of like soups and stews and stuff, but it's so interesting because we're so used to eating these, regular soups that are so high in sodium. When you eat a Plant Strong soup, which is meant to be seasoned to taste. So when they ship it out, it's low in sodium, but they're like, if you want to add a little finishing salt on it, add it. But people automatically are like, oh my gosh, it's not salty enough at all, until they realize it's meant to have the seasonings and the salt adjusted. But it's just so interesting because our taste buds are used to that like super high sodium in packaged foods.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna add. You already covered it, but the whole like what our taste buds are used to, and then if you cut it out, because I know I am not salt free, but I know there's the SOS where people are salt free, and it's like, oh my goodness. I mean, I would love to be there, or maybe experiment with it here and there. But whew, that is crazy. But your taste adjusts, so then they taste food, and it's like it's flavorful. To me, it's like I'll make something, and it's like it's just not quite right. I add a little more salt, and it's like I can taste the flavor now. But it's like I know that would change if I went without the salt.
Yes, and really, just if you can add it at the end. So if you're cooking at home and you're just adding it at the end to taste, is really the best thing. And we've had multiple guest speakers in our wellness program, and we've had David Goldman on many times, and he's an incredible nutrition researcher. He has so many, letters behind his name. I finally have just been like, here's David. But he was the chief science advisor for the Game Changers film. And he's done a lot of research about, salt and sodium and plant-based eating. And he's like, just use the iodized salt, because iodine is a missing in Americans' diets. Because now we're doing the Himalayan salt and all these different interesting salts that don't have iodine in them. So just go ahead and use the iodized salt. It's just a small, tiny amount. And if you're using it at the end, you're also getting the iodine.
Yeah, that's a good recommendation. All right, moving on to added sugar. Sugar is in so many products. I know ingredient wise, when you're I know obviously it tells you the sugar content in foods, but in the ingredients, it's like, man, they sneak sugar in everything. So
everywhere.
What are your thoughts on sugar? And also, just give us a little data dump about sugar.
We really, if we're eating whole food plant-based, we want to be focusing on those whole foods to get our, if you're going to be eating something that has a natural sugar, it needs to be fruit. Really minimizing those added sugars is, especially in processed foods, because we know they'll spike our blood sugar, and we want to try to minimize that with the processed foods, because typically they're not going to have the fiber to balance out that spike. So I try to really watch yogurt and ketchup and dressings, and you'll see all these different ingredient names that are all added sugar. And so go to your, you can look at your total sugars and your added sugars. But of course, high fructose corn syrup, fructose, there's like fruit sugar. You can Google all of the different names. It's insane. But when you really don't need to worry about it that much when you're eating whole food plant-based, because we're eating the whole food ingredients, and you don't need to worry about, we're going to talk about fruit in the future, but the natural sugars in fruit are totally different than all of those refined added sugars, because the fruit also has the vitamins and nutrients and the fiber and all of the things that nature put in it.
Yep, I was gonna say just it's all stripped out when you get to table sugar and all these other
Mhm.
forms of sugar, and then we have the fake sugar, and the list goes
Oh my
on.
gosh,
But
so
something
many
that
things.
was very eye opening to me was when I realized that 4 grams or 1 teaspoon is 4 grams of sugar. And I
Mhm.
remember I did a quick little video and I like measured out from a can of pop what it was.
Yes.
It's insane. There's plenty of videos. I just spit. There's plenty of videos on YouTube where I see like different things that, and they weigh it out. That is an eye-opening experience. Like
It's amazing.
we should not be having that much sugar, and it's
I
just
know.
over the years continuously gone up because manufacturers know we love it and we get addicted, and they add more. So yeah,
Yep. And same thing with the cholesterol. There's no need for added sugars.
yeah,
Yeah, like we don't, that our
yeah.
body does not need the added sugars, because we
Cholesterol or
actually,
sugar.
I had my daughter, one of my daughter's friends thought we needed to have added sugar. So that is apparently a myth out there. Yeah.
There's a lot of information on nutrition out there, so I'm sure
Yeah.
there's people saying you need added sugar. It's good for you. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, moving on to whole grains. How do we know if we're getting whole grains? Because we'll go into it more later, but dog's probably gonna bark. Refined grains versus whole grains,
Mhm.
and how do we know
Yeah.
what we're getting?
It needs to say whole or sprouted. So if it says whole wheat, then that is a whole wheat. Or if it says sprouted, then that's your whole version of it. And then there's all different kinds of terms of, if you definitely don't want the enriched wheat flour. Um, I'm trying to think of the other terms they use in all of the tricky terms they use in breads and things like that. Just focus on the word whole and or sprouted and you'll be good.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah, I was gonna say, and I'll have a chart during that time to show you kind of some sample words of what's whole grain, what's not, to gain that awareness. But I mean, it can get tricky because I know it's like wheat flour. That sounds like what would
Right.
be good for you, but it's like
Yeah.
whole wheat flour. It's that one word
Right.
whole that you want to throw.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. And I often will look at the fiber, because a lot of times if the fiber is really low and it's like wheat bread and there's no fiber in it, or 1 gram, less than 1 gram, it's not going to be a
yeah,
whole wheat flour.
that's a good thing to add. Yeah, looking at the fiber content and kind
Yeah.
of
It's
doing a
not
reality
healthy.
check.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, moving on to a few questions, troubleshooting, and then we'll wrap up here. Is plant based the same as whole food?
Oh my gosh. You probably could take this.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
What do you
I'll
think?
take this one. So no, same with vegan. It's like I feel like there's all of these terms. It gets confusing. Honestly, there's no set data or set definition. Even whole food, I'm sure, is getting misused in the world right now. But for the most part, plant based. Again, like these tater tots can be plant based. The vegan nuggets I was talking about earlier, plant based, plant based. Whole food plant based. I like to say the whole phrase. Whole food plant based is where you're eating foods in their whole form, reverting back to our episode 1 where we described what whole food plant based eating is. But it's just a buzzword marketing term that, confuses people and makes it kind of tricky to determine. But wow, my light almost fell. If you look
Yeah.
for whole food, then you're heading in the right direction, at least, but still looking at the ingredient label. Do you
Yeah.
have anything to add there?
Just the fact that goes back to the whole marketing on the front of the package. Often when our participants start in the wellness program, they see plant-based ranch dressing
Yeah.
and, all kinds of plant-based, whatever processed foods, thinking genuinely, this is fantastic. It's plant-based. I'm so excited about this. But when we get into the label reading, we realize when we turn it over, that the front was just marketing and it's just getting us to try to buy it. It's not a healthy whole food. So your you know differentiation between plant-based and whole food plant-based, that really is the key. I've even seen plant-based laundry detergent. Like they're using plant-based for everything. It's ridiculous.
Do we have some examples? Well, we've kind of talked about that of other ways some of these terms have been used or there's misguidance out there. I'm trying to think of just, I mean, just the labels, the words, the colors that can be misleading. Do you have any
I
examples off the top of your head?
think that the term, they use the term nature a lot.
Yeah.
They use like whole grains a lot, but sometimes there might not even be. It's like you need to see whole wheat. It's really hard to find actual whole grains in products because, like I said, they're not shelf stable.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to anything you see on the front, I just would not trust it.
Yeah. That's why that's like the label, the nutrition facts label itself has to be
They
accurate. I mean that's regulated. The front is not, and the
Right.
sides
And
are
they're
not.
going to say things like high protein or, it's there, whatever the buzzword of what Americans are focused on,
Hmm.
that's what they're going to put on the front of the label. I even remember Fiber One bars would talk about the amount of fiber, but it's really just one type of fiber they're adding to bulk up the fiber in the Fiber One bar.
Yeah.
And when you're eating whole food plant based that has natural sources of fiber, you're getting such a variety of soluble and insoluble and all the vitamins and nutrients that come with it. So I am seeing, yes, there's a push of protein, but also we're starting to see fiber. So what companies are going to do is start putting a bunch of psyllium husk in foods and saying they're, or cellulose and saying they're
Yeah.
high in fiber, and people are going to continue to buy fiber supplements or these foods that have added fiber. And we really need to be focusing on the whole food part.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good way to conclude, kind of round this out. And again, just as a reminder, it's not that you have to, you know, go crazy on the labels. It's just reminding yourself the more you know, the smarter decisions you can make. And if you go with the whole food route and the plate method and picking these whole grains and the veggies and the plants and stuff, there aren't labels to read and it's single ingredients. So that's
Yeah.
definitely a good way to go. All right, well, that concludes episode number 4
Sure.
of the Basics podcast. So next time we will be talking about don't eat that or should you? Fruit, carbs, and more. A lot of mystery there. You guys are going to want to tune in.
Can't wait.
All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, do whatever to pass this around. We want to provide knowledge to you guys. So thank you again, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.